All right, we're the Libertarian Moms, and this is Parenting Porcupines. And tonight we're going to be taking on the second half of a topic called Monsters Under My Bed and In My Head. Only tonight, instead of talking about our mental health, we're going to be talking about the mental health of our kids and how we are working to protect it. This is Parenting Porcupines. Thanks for being with us. We're live here Saturday. Let's do this. So last Saturday we went live on YouTube and my husband was trying to interact with us and he was like, but I've got Vinions. I want to talk. So you're out there and you also have Vinions, which of course are views and opinions into the same word, Vinions. If you do in fact have Vinions and you want to participate with us, if you're on Facebook, you can leave comments. The comments are live. I can see them. We can respond to you there. Hopefully YouTube will allow you to do that as well. But I think you have to log into YouTube to be able to do it. So give that a shot. And if not, you can, if you know us, you can text any one of us and maybe we'll respond via text. In the meantime, this is Libertarian Moms, and this is episode 10 of season 2. And in season 1, we worked a little bit with this topic of monsters under my bed and also in my head. And it was mostly about how we talk about our own mental health and how we take time to listen to each other and support one another and suggest to one another that we take time away and nurse that mental health side of ourselves. And so then we said, okay, well, next time we'll talk about our kids. And then it's been like 10 episodes. And so here we are. We're going to talk about how important our kids' mental health is. We did not shuffle around topics and avoid this one. I promise you. It has always been on the list of something we're going to look at. So Jessica put together our show notes this week. You can get them out on the blog. It's parentingporcupines.com. And you can follow along there. But it starts with this article in the Dayton Daily News providing some statistics related to the mental health and well-being of children. And so specifically, it's about COVID, but I think, Jessica, you make a good point about how COVID might make us aware that our kids' mental health is a thing, but it's been a thing for a long time. So walk us through this. Bring it in.
I think that the obvious and best example, the most glaring example is the rise in school shootings, because I think Columbine was really the first, or at least the first that I can remember. And I was in high school when that happened. There's like a whole generation of people who weren't even alive for that, guys. That blows my mind. But, and since Columbine, there have been so many school shootings. And if you read about all of those situations, those children had some mental health issues. There was some mental illness there. And the parents did not recognize it. They might have known something was off, but they didn't know what the name of it was. They didn't know what to call it. They didn't know how to hit it head on, and they didn't know how to talk to their kids about it. And part of that is because we have lived in this society where it's very stigmatized. Like, you don't talk about that, right? You don't talk about your depression, your anxiety. You don't talk about the fact that you are suicidal 5 out of 7 days every week. Those are things you don't talk about. It's taboo, or it always has been taboo. And so now, I think that as these things have been on the uptick, as these things have been on the rise, people have started thinking more about that and looking more at that and trying to really get to the core of what is causing those issues. But I do think that now with COVID, because we're a year into this lockdown, like, things are just so weird for our kids, and kids are suffering at an alarming rate from mental illness. And I think now that we have, we've started having these discussions, we know what this is, right? Because we've experienced it and now we know what to call it. And so we now know how to deal with it or help them deal with it.
So many things to unpack there, but I want to start with the first idea that the parents had no idea, right? Like they didn't, or they weren't aware, they didn't pick up on the signs, right? There is not a bigger fear. There's probably, like, I can top 5 biggest fears as a mom. But one of the top 5 biggest fears for me is being so out of touch with my kid that I don't even see it, that I don't even recognize that, right? Like
Right.
how close is too close, right? Like nobody's breastfeeding your kid through high school, but at the same
Right.
time, like how can you know your kid well enough to know that this is what's happening and this is what's going on, and be honest and open enough about it that you're not taken completely off guard, that you're not like, my kid would never do that. Like, I mean, be aware of it. When we talked about in the Spitballs episode, and you were talking about your kid, and you're like, I know everybody says their kid's a good kid, but let me tell you how I knew that my kid was the good kid. You know what I mean? Like, and so how do you get to the place where you're close enough to them, you understand them well enough, they're not able to hide this from you, and you pick up on these signs? Like, do you just have to know what to look for? I mean, do you guys have that fear that your kids are doing something that you're just like not even aware of? Melissa, you've got 3 of them. Are they running around like subterfuge and you just don't even know what's happening?
Well, luckily they're still little, so we're not quite to that point yet. But yeah, one of the, I don't know where I picked it up, but someone in a parenting book or a blog or a podcast somewhere said something that really stuck with me. Like, okay, everybody, I know who I want my kids to be, but you have to like look at your kids and see who they are. They are people. Like, they have feelings, they have their own agendas. Like, you can't be, my kid's the doctor, so we're doing this. Like, they have plans for their lives, and you have to see them who they are instead of who you think they should be or who you wish they were. You have to just deal with who they are.
And do they show you? Like, Jessica, do your kids tell you this is exactly who I am? I mean, are we asking the right questions? Are we digging in deep enough?
In our house, we have a policy of honesty, and obviously
more rules. You guys fucked me up last week with the rules. I shared that episode with everybody. I was like, you guys, I'm getting this parenting thing all wrong. My friends have
No, you're not. No, you're not. Holly's a good kid.
Okay. So sorry. Policy in your house.
Yeah. So we have a policy of honesty in our house. And
yeah, we do too.
We, if my children are from different fathers, and so Jackson has had his own set of challenges with, just being part of a blended family, and circumstances that kind of come out of that. But, I think I've always tried my best, and I think I've done a good job of this. I think that he does feel safe, and that he can be open and honest about anything. But typically when he has been going through something related to the situation that has put more stress on him than any other kid his age, I just try to check in, and I don't force him to talk to me, but it is very much a conversation of, are you okay? And if you're not okay and you don't want to talk to me about it, do you want me to find you someone to talk to? And I've had that conversation with him. I can't tell you how many times, because I will be okay if my kids don't want to talk to me about something, but I want them talking to someone if they need
someone
to
you trust.
Right.
Not just anyone, not their friends.
Right.
Their friends could be idiots.
So if
Talk to someone I trust too.
Yeah.
Well, and their friends aren't equipped for it, right? Like
Yeah,
their friends don't have any more experience than they have.
Yeah.
And that's what I told Holly. I was like, your friends don't have any more experience than you do. So if you're not going to talk to me about it, let's find somebody that can be a sounding board for you. Right. And she's an only child, so she doesn't have anybody else to talk to. So okay, let's find a counselor, a therapist, somebody that's going to once a week or every 2 weeks or whatever, you can sit down with this person. You have somebody to just bounce these ideas off of and say, here's what I'm thinking and feeling. Does this make me crazy? Right? Like, and so to your point, Jessica, about asking, are you okay? You can see it in like physical demeanor. You can see it in facial expressions when they stop doing the things that they really enjoy doing. Like there's these sort of little hints about it. But I think that when I ask the question, are you okay? She responds with what she thinks I want to hear. I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm going to be fine. And I'm like, okay, how do I get to the answer that's the truth? It's not because she wants to lie. It's because she doesn't want to worry me. Right. And so that's, I guess, my question is I'm worried about maybe I'm not asking the right questions, or maybe I'm not looking for the right things, I guess, is where that fear for me starts to ratchet up.
I call, and I'm going to use Jackson just because he's older. But I'm going to use him as an example. But I mean, I'll call him out, if we go a few days and he is just super snippy or, whatever, I'll call him out on it. And I'll say, look, you're being an asshole. What is going on? What is up? What is bothering you? And if he says nothing, then, obviously there is something, and we don't stop until we get to the bottom of it. And it may have nothing to do with anything. It might just be teenage angst. But it's there's going to be a discussion about it because we're going to get to the bottom of it. But I think that the other side of that is in our policy of honesty. I'm probably going to I might get some heat for this, and I don't give a shit because it works in my house. I'm honest with my kids. So if I am feeling overwhelmed, if I am feeling at the end of my rope, I tell them.
Yeah.
If I'm having a bad day or I'm really stressed out, I let them know. And they understand what that means. They know if mommy is stressed out and she's working on something for work, we're going to go outside, or we're going to stay in our room, or we're going to go watch a movie.
And it's good for kids to watch you deal with things that are too big and overwhelming. Like, nobody has it all together.
Right.
Yeah.
We still deal with these off-kilter emotions, and you're not weird. You're not any different than anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think there you hit on two really important things, I think, Melissa. The first is if Holly can see how I'm struggling and how I'm working through it, then maybe I'm demonstrating for her a way that she can work through it, which is like, I ask a lot of questions. I'm very much an extrovert. I monologue a lot, and I'll like be asking these questions, and I'll just be saying to her, I'm kind of monologuing right now. And if that's cool with you, I'm just sort of working through these questions that I have. And she's very much an introvert. So I might think she's ignoring me, but she's just sort of internally processing stuff. And so we have a lot of that where it's like me kind of talking and Holly like not responding. And then later I'll be like, does any of this make sense to you? And she'll be like, I get it. I can see what you're doing there. Like, I understand that's so I don't know. Like, I'm with you too, Jess, as far as like, this could just be preteen angst. And then I'm also on that. I still have that like always fear that I'm missing something that's really big. That's a really big deal. Right. And so the second thing, Melissa, that you said that I thought was really important is that you're contextualize these things. You're no different than anybody else. Welcome to the club. It's called everyone, right? Especially with COVID. We all are experiencing this. And when we put that into context that way, then it's not like I'm a 12-year-old girl suffering from anxiety. It's like, yeah, every 12-year-old girl has anxiety because we all got boobs and didn't know what to do with it. Right? Like, I mean,
when
we all been through that.
When you're that age, it feels like you're the only person this has ever happened to.
Yes.
Ever. And no one understands.
And how important is it then that we contextualize that for them? Because I don't mean to make light of her experience, because of course for her, it's the very first time and it is really important. And I remember how important it was for me too. But at the same time, like, you can't make this.
Yeah.
You can't make it such a big deal that like she believed, if she truly believed that she was the only person who'd ever experienced this ever. Can you imagine what kind of diva would be walking around my house when she's 15 and 16 years old? I mean, my God, like, so I'm at that place, Jess, help me, right? Because I want to be compassionate and I want to be, and I want to legitimize that. Like, I get it. I understand what you're going through. I feel that. Also, welcome to the club, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And I'm struggling with it. I don't know. Go ahead. Go.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think for me, because I suffer from these things, right? Like, I struggle with anxiety. I battle depression. I deal with thoughts about suicide almost daily. It's something that I deal with, right? And I've had that support system. And so I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. I also know what it feels like to feel like you're alone and you can't talk about it. I know what it feels like not to have a name for it and not to understand it. And so I don't know. I feel like having that policy of honesty in our house and me being honest about what's going on with me helps them know that it's okay to be honest with me about what's going on with them. Yeah. And that's not to say that they always will, because they're kids and kids will be kids, but so far it's worked out pretty well for us. And somebody actually, on one of the posts I made about this episode this week, hinted, insinuated that people who have these conversations are guilty of Munchausen by proxy. And that's absolute bullshit. So if
First,
you're one of those people,
unpack that real quick. What
Yeah.
does that even mean?
well, I think what they were saying is because the meme that I used is, it pointed out this woman it was like a quote from somebody who said that as soon as, she realized that her kids had the genetics, like her mental health genetics, she started working toward diagnosis and treatment plans for them. Right. And so she was basically just saying that if you automatically believe that it's genetic and you only believe what a doctor says, that you're basically forcing that on your kid, that you're teaching them that they're mentally ill is essentially what she was getting at. I didn't gauge any further than that because she wasn't worth my time. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So let's go to that real quick though, because I told you guys, so Holly's an only child. So she has a counselor that she sees because, she's 12, almost 13. She's got feelings. And there aren't any siblings to bounce those off of. And because of COVID, she's been in the house. So they're really her friend and her friends aren't really equipped for that. Right. Like I wouldn't want another 13-year-old to be working through some of these things with Holly. So I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. As we start talking through what's next, like here's your thing and then here's what's next, right? Here's what's next. And I push back a little bit on the counselor because I'm like, there are things related to resilience and mental toughness and the ability to build that grit and that optimism. Those things are skills. These are not, you're not born an optimist, right? Like you learn how to look on the bright side. You learn how to find the good in the scenario that you're in. You're taught how to do that. And so on the one side, like I get identifying, these are some symptoms of anxiety or depression and that kind of thing. And then the other side going, here are some ways you can build mental toughness. Here are some ways you can build resilience. And let's make sure we're getting a balance here. It's not just all about, I have a hard time focusing, give me a drug. Oh, yeah, here's Ritalin. It's got to be like, okay, well, I have a hard time focusing, so we're going to use some medication for that. But we're also going to put you through some focus activities that force you to learn how to do this, right? These are not, it's not that you're incapable of behavioral change. So that's, I guess, maybe my question for you too, is like, when do you know that this is behavioral change? And when do you know that this is mental illness? Or do you?
Go,
Melissa.
No, go ahead.
Okay. My son, when he was started in first grade and throughout second grade, they tested him for ADHD, and I kept getting reports that, he can't sit through class, and he's a very hyper boy. He was in second grade. Just let the boy run around for a minute. But they kept pushing, take him to the doctor, get him medicated. I pulled him out of school. I'm like, because I could. So we homeschooled, and we've been working on ways to organize himself. And so he knows what to do, ways to focus, even if something's happening in the house. So he's learned, he's doing much better. He's going back to regular school next year, and I'm so excited. So we'll see how well he's learned. But we've worked on just developing skills to function, because he's going to have to function in life.
Right. Yeah. Yep. We, Caldwell struggles, and we are actually in the process of having all the testing done. He's been diagnosed ADHD, and we've chosen not to medicate him yet either. And there are some concerns that I have. I won't discuss them on this episode. Right. But we've decided that we just want to wait. We want to wait and see if we can help him establish some coping mechanisms to work through this. He is not a harm to himself. Mm-hmm. There is, he does suffer from some anxiety just because of the challenges that he experiences and the frustration related to those challenges.
Right.
But we're very honest and open with his teachers about what he needs. These are the things that he needs. And when he's challenged, when he's held accountable, he does better. And so, we don't in our house, it's not, oh, well, he has this challenge and we have to, poor precious
Go easy on
baby.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like he's held to the same standards. He is held to the same standards. Now we do make some accommodations for him, of course, because it's not fair to him that we treat him the same way that we treat our independent Jackson, who does things by himself and he's independent. But, he is held accountable, and we make very clear what those expectations are. And when he doesn't meet those expectations, there are consequences, and we hold him accountable. We hold him to that, because I'm with you, Melissa. Like, no matter what it is, you still have to learn to function in some way, right? You have to learn. And now's the time, right? Because he is coming into adolescence. And if we don't do that now, it's never going to happen.
So I think you're onto something here, because part of what we talked about last week with like being a mean mom, and we were kind of joking around, we were sort of lighthearted about the topic, but the idea was making those hard choices and drawing those boundaries and sticking to them and holding them accountable and creating that kind of discipline and behavioral change. So is there a place for that as far as mental health is concerned? Do we have it's not all sympathy and hugs and let me give you a lot of attention. Some of it is, let's understand where this is coming from and let's figure out how to fix it. Right. Like, and not necessarily drugs or whatever, but like, so part of Holly's anxiety is related to swim. As you might imagine, being a 13-year-old girl in a bathing suit on a pool deck, right? Like there's a tremendous amount. I mean, shoot, I'm a 43-year-old woman. I get on a bathing pool deck and I'm like, nobody look. Right? So I don't blame her there, right? But like, how much of this is like manufactured anxiety, and how much of this is legitimate, like you said, harm to herself, kind of mental health or mental wellness. And then the other part of that is the benefits of the swim and the physical exercise, and that's one of the things we talked about last week. So okay, here I have this sort of kind of physical solution, and yet it makes her unhappy. So what am I? You know what I mean? Like, am I doing, and again, I'm so afraid that I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm making the wrong choice here, and it's going to have these terrible, terrifying consequences. I don't know. I just said that live on the internet. I'm so afraid. I'm fucking it all up, and I'm totally afraid of that. If you can raise your hand, if you can feel that anxiety.
Yeah. I think that's true of all of us, right?
No. Yes.
And just doing the best we can, right? So we had some questions on here. Jess, I think we've hit a few of them, but let's look at number 4 about how do we as parents ensure that the next generation shatters the stigma around mental health. Do you think it's more common for our kids to be self-aware in terms of their mental health now? I mean, there's a lot, like I went looking for images for the blog, and I put in mental health, and all these bullying things came up. So there is a lot of conversation in schools around bullying and empathy, and how does it make other kids feel when you treat them bad and that kind of thing. So do you think there's a higher level of awareness for kids as far as mental health is concerned right now? Or do you think it's?
I think there is. And I mean, I think for the reasons that you mentioned, but I think especially now with the pandemic, I mean, I think that people are starting to become more aware of this topic. And I think they are checking in with their kids and having these conversations because it's something that's, more at the forefront. I mean, we're seeing it in the news. You didn't see this leading up to Sandy Hook.
Right.
You didn't see these kinds of news reports about kids with struggling with mental illness. You didn't see the reports of increased suicide in teenagers, which is happening right now. So I think there is more awareness, and I think that if this pandemic was good for nothing else, maybe that's going to be a good thing that comes out of it. Maybe we start having these conversations more often about how can we support our kids better.
Here's what I think the pandemic did. It not only forced us to spend more time with our kids.
Yeah.
to see our kids, right? Like 8 hours a day, you're seeing your kids in front of you, where before we put them off to school and you didn't see them for 6 or 7 hours a day. And if you were working full time and they were doing something after school, it might be 10 hours a day that you weren't seeing them. And in that little bit of time that you did see them, you didn't have enough time to really immerse yourself in them. I think people are getting to know their kids better now than they did a year ago. And I don't want to lose that. I mean, I, for one, don't want to lose it. That's why we're going to homeschool again next year with Holly at the house and me at the house, because I'm like, this was great. I don't want to give it up. I don't want to give up the fact that we're like so in each other's space and on top of each other that every little twitch, I recognize it.
Yeah.
I'm like super creepy mom that way. Melissa, you've been in your house with your kids all this time. Like, do you feel like you know them better than you did a year ago?
Yeah. I'll like me and my middle daughter are like oil and water, and she makes me insane. But yes, I've gotten better at dealing with her because I've had to. But yeah, I love my kids. I love having them home to a point. They need to go to grandma's house every once in a while. But yeah.
Well, all families need a little space here and there, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't blame that. We went, we stayed at the beach for a week one time, and we stayed in this place that was so small that, like, when we got home, our house is 3,500 square feet. So we got home, we were like, phew, like I was in my room, Holly was in her room, Dad was downstairs. Like, we were as far away from each other as we could possibly get because our little beach condo had been so small for a whole week. So I think that's part of it, Jessica. I think part of it is awareness of mental health because of all the conversations in the news. But I think a big part of it is that we're able to pay attention now because we're in the same room with them a lot more than we used to be. When they were going to school for hours and hours and hours a day, their condition was just what they told us it was, or what their teachers told us it was. And now we're witnesses to it. And I really hope that as people are getting smarter about that, as they recognize their kids a little bit better, they don't let up. Like, don't let up with that time. Don't give up your weekends. Don't give up your nights. Like, keep that kid in front of you as much as you can so that you're not going to lose visibility to that.
Yeah, because my dad always says, 18 years sounds like a long, long time, but it is not. It's like a blink of an eye. That's all the time you get to take them and make them people and send them out in the world. You get 18 years and it's like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So don't waste it.
How is this topic relevant to our libertarian audience? So the last question Jessica asked on this list is, how important is this as we work toward a free and voluntary society? What do you think, Jess? What's the connection between mental health and a free and voluntary society?
So I think that the best example is the stigma, right? And people feel like they can't talk about this, but we all know that this is important. I mean, your mental health is as important as your physical health, period. Insane. It is.
Right.
And if we are avoiding these conversations because they make us uncomfortable, if we are avoiding these conversations because we're afraid that people aren't going to like us or they're going to think we're crazy, then we're not getting the help we need, right? And our neighbors can't give us the help that we need. And on the other side of that is, if you recognize that somebody needs help, if you see that they're in crisis, you need to help them, whatever that looks like, whatever it is that they need, you need to figure out a way to help them, because the whole idea of a free society, a voluntary society, is when we all take care of each other. And that is not all putting money into a pool and then distributing it equally, guys. That's not what that is. It's recognizing when someone is in crisis and being there to help them. It is letting them know that if they need to have a conversation about a difficult topic, you're there to listen without judgment, without any sort of even response, because sometimes people just need to talk. And I think that fostering that environment where we care about each other, we respect each other, and we take care of each other, that is how we get to a place where we can truly be a free society, right?
Yeah, that's the opposite of, oh, well, someone should do something about that. There ought to be, that my neighbor, had a breakdown and shot his wife. There needs to be stronger gun laws. Well, no, your
No.
neighbor, someone should have noticed that he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. His family, his neighbors, his work, someone should have noticed. I am sure there were signs.
Yeah.
So we don't need a law. We need a community.
We need a community. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think you're exactly on that. And we talk a lot about how overburdened the schools are with what we expect the schools to be doing. And if we're also expecting the schools to be keeping an eye on our kids' mental health, in addition to the fact that they're keeping an eye on their academic health and they're looking out for their sexual health, right? And they're looking out for their criminal health, you know what I mean? Like, and now let's add that to it as well. Like, how in the world, when we put school counselors in place, it's meant to be a fail safe. It's not meant to be free therapy for our kids, right? Like, I think that when we ask somebody else to take on the responsibility of compassion, that's when we lose our free and voluntary society. Compassion is everybody's responsibility. It's everybody's job to ask those questions and to demonstrate caring and love for one another. So yeah, I agree with that, Jess. And I definitely think this falls into our libertarian sort of utopia where we think of everybody taking responsibility for themselves, but also being willing to be there for their neighbors and for their friends and be part of that. We've got comments from Jamie Voigt, Jamie. And Jamie says, support school choice legislation for kids who have trouble with learning or mental difficulties. Yeah, we've talked about school choice a little bit in terms of letting parents make the right choice for their kids. And I do think if you know your kids, like if you say this is the thing they're struggling with and the system doesn't work for that, then it's okay to go outside the system and look for alternatives. And part of that is the system itself locks us down so much that we don't think we have choices or we don't think we have the means by which to make those choices. But certainly if we can, try to get ourselves out from underneath that sense of sort of suppression, we may be able to do that.
Yeah, that one size fits all. Yep.
Yeah. All right. We're here at 31 minutes. Jess, what else do you want to put out here? We've got a couple of other comments the other thing I wanted to talk about real fast. No one is suggesting that not talking to your kids about this makes you a bad parent. If this is a struggle for you from a conversation, if you didn't grow up in a household that had the vocabulary for this, if you are not somebody that is necessarily hyper aware of this, all we're suggesting is that you consider becoming aware and that at the very least you help your kids find the resources that are available to them. Because if it's not you, it doesn't have to be you. It can be a neighbor, it can be a minister, it can be a coach, it can be, other trustworthy adults that can help them kind of navigate this stuff. But this is not like a, hey, shame on you parents for not talking to your kids about this. We're not ever throwing shade like that. Like, at least I'm not ever throwing shade like that.
I've never sat down and had a conversation with my children about their mental health. That's not a thing that has happened. I wouldn't know where to start. You know what we do? We name our emotions. You look like you feel sad, or you look frustrated, and they'll say, yes, I am frustrated. And you just talk about, why are you frustrated? What can we do? Just walk through the emotion.
Right.
Like, we don't have my kids couldn't tell you what mental health meant. So it's just little things like that.
Yeah. And again, that compassion piece, right? It starts with caring enough to ask, caring enough to pay attention, and not feeling just annoyed by your kids for being in a bad mood and telling them if they can't get into it. Like this, I grew up in a house where, like, if you came down, you were in a bad mood, you were sent back upstairs until your mood improved.
I may have done that, but that's because they were being mean to other people. You can be in a bad mood. That doesn't give you license to be mean.
Right. To take it out on others.
Right.
Well, I think too, like, just kind of stemming off what Melissa said, giving them an opportunity to, in your case, what you do in your house is they name their emotions, but letting them know that it's okay to give them a name. Those emotions can have a name, and that you're not going to try to fix it for them. You might try to help them work through it, but you're not going to try to fix it, right? Like, let's work through it. And I think that's really the point of the conversation, is whatever that looks like in your house, whatever that conversation is, whatever the words that you use, let them be kind. let them be from a place of love. Let them be from a place of support, because that's what the kids need. You know, they just, that's what they need.
Yeah, because if they get nothing else, they'll get that you care and you love them.
That you're there.
Which
you
solves so many problems.
So many.
Have you guys seen Inside Out, the Pixar movie Inside Out?
Yes, it's so good.
I have never cried so much, and it's a Pixar movie. You just cry the whole time. But
it was on the other day, and we were watching a little bit of it, and I got super like weepy about it. And I was like, "What am I doing? Turn this off!" Like, Hallie's not even in the room. I've already seen this movie. I don't need to cry about this poor little girl in this movie. But I think what was a key takeaway. Yeah, but the key takeaway from that movie was how important sadness is, and how important it is to have sadness, to recognize the value of sadness. So like, instead of being, you know, always on that side of like, hey, you seem like you're in a bad mood, or you seem unhappy, like, let's fix it. Let's make you happy. What can I do to make you happy? How can I snap you out of this? Instead being like, like, let's talk about how, you know, where the sadness comes from, and process that too. And there's been a few years where we've had some loss in our family. And so there's been a lot of grief. I think COVID has created a mourning period for a lot of people, like things that we thought we were going to have, we didn't have. We didn't have football. We didn't have, and it sounds dumb to be like, I'm experiencing grief over not getting to go to football, but like, that's a big part of our lives when that's the way our family gets together, right? We didn't have traditional Christmas. There were a lot of things we didn't have last year. So it's okay to have that grief and feel that grief, and sort of commiserating around that grief too. Our Christmas card, we took pictures of ourselves in every room in our house as if we had gone on vacation. We're like in our snow gear on our stairs, and like in our bathing suits in our bathroom, you know, like pretending like we had like gone on vacation, except we'd been like in our house instead. And that exercise alone of like pretending like we had gone somewhere, but really we were just in the house, was like, we laughed, like we cried. We were laughing so hard about all these different ideas we had for that. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing I think where you can kind of bring out, of course we're feeling sad about this. It's okay to feel sad about this. And now let's process that and put it where it belongs. And
let's not live in it.
Yeah. Don't let that wound be the thing that defines us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Soul is also a good movie, as Jamie points out.
Oh, I love that movie.
I may have bawled my way through that one also.
Yeah. That one was a tearjerker for sure.
Yeah, Soul was great. All right, this was a really good topic. Thank you, Jessica, so much for bringing it to us. I think we've covered the mental health side, but of course, if our listeners want to see anything else ever, by all means, leave us comments, subscribe, like, share, all the other suchness, and let us know what you'd like to see from us, because we really want to talk about being parents of kids right now, about being libertarian parents of kids right now. Free range parenting might be our very next topic coming up before too long. How much freedom is too much freedom? Thanks, gals. I'll see you guys.
On that.
Yeah. You know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. Next week, free range parenting. We'll talk about that. Excellent. Awesome. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everyone.